So, Pramda, good afternoon. I'm Councillor Peter Lewis, Chair of the Fire Authority. Can I welcome everyone to today's executive meeting, where we are all attending remotely. All microphones will be muted unless you wish to speak. Please indicate if you wish to speak by using the raised hand function found by clicking the participants icon on your screen. At the appropriate time, I will call out your name and you will need to turn your microphone on. If you have any calls to leave the meeting, can I ensure that you have turned your microphones and video off? And can I remind members to choose their language of choice as translation facilities are available. So we'll now move to our agenda for this afternoon. And apologies, I've had a couple of tweaks, so whether or not they're new people coming in, Alwyn, but can you give us the apologies you've had to date?
Yeah, and I'm just noticing that Councillor Davis has got his hand up. Mr Davis, sorry, Mr Davis, ydw i'n neud efo'r cyfieithu? No.
Councillor Davis is on mute. Apologies from Brian. Councillor Brian Blakely from Rill.
Okay,
from Marion Batesman, Roger Parry and Rondo Roberts. Okay,
thank you, Alwyn. Item 2 is declarations of interest. I see no raised hands, so move on to item 3, notice of urgent matters. I haven't been advised of any. Let's move on to item 4, and minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of May. I'll just go through each page. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9. So, would somebody like to propose them as a true record attended the meeting? Thank you, Anne. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded, Chair.
Okay, thank you. All in favour, if you raise your hand. Thank you. Item 5, under matters arising, I'm going to invite the Chief Fire Officer. First of all, remiss of me not to welcome you to your first executive panel meeting since your appointment, Chief, but nevertheless, welcome to see you here. And perhaps you'd kindly give us an update in relation to paragraph 7 in terms of the emergency services mobile communication programme.
Thank you very much, Chair. The presentation that you had at your last meeting about ESMCP explained why we were having challenges around the funding for the current existing model. And members will be interested to know that the issue was raised at the Fire and Rescue Consultative Forum on the 21st of July. She agreed to take this matter away because what we were trying to convey to her was the fact that given the delay in delivering the ESMCP, the current grant until 2026, and that the grant had not kept pace with the costs. So she is going to consider whether the grant could be increased and also maintained up until that point, and she will be returning to the forum with an answer next time.
Okay, thank you for that. Members got any other matters arising they wanted to raise? I don't see any names. So we'll move on to item 6, and this is the COVID-19 update, and Richard is going to present this, but can I also ask him if he perhaps could include an update on the activity that you had particularly over the weekend, which received quite a lot of publicity in the press. So Richard, please. You're still muted, Richard.
Pnawn da, aelodau. Good afternoon, members. I'll first talk about some of the activity over the weekend. Members will be aware that in the press it's been reported, widely reported, that all the emergency services are seeing an increase in activity, particularly across Wales, potentially due to more people being having staycations and staying in the UK. And of course, the weather has also helped. We're no different. We are busier than usual. And this weekend, for instance, we had attended over 60 fire calls. 22 of these were fires out in the open. And we've had one that started late on Friday evening. And we actually still have an appliance there now, although we are scaling down operations. This was near Pwllheli, and it was attended by 10 different fire engines, 4 wildfire units, and 3 officers over the weekend. The dry weather and the heat from the sun contributes to these type of fires. Another factor is the wind. So when we extinguish the fire, there are still some embers burning, and when the wind picks up, it tends to fan the flames, making it extremely difficult for us to extinguish it completely. Hence why we're back there today, making sure that the fire doesn't spread anymore. Over 20,000 square meters is burnt in this one instant across, as I said, in Pwllheli. These incidents are extremely resource intensive, and they demonstrate the need for us to continually adapt and move fire engines around our region, not only to respond to these incidents, but also to keep and maintain availability of fire engines for other incidents across North Wales. And again, this weekend, we attended 11 fires in buildings, dwellings and flats. Thankfully, there were no serious injuries, but 2 incidents to note from this weekend involved elderly people who live alone, and both identified as being vulnerable adults. The fires in these people's homes were extinguished quickly, and as I said, there'd been no serious injuries. But this does demonstrate the importance of our partnership working with other agencies who deal with vulnerable people on a daily basis. And our partnership work in identifying those vulnerable people and working with those agencies means that we keep them safe in their homes. We carry out safe and well checks following all incidents, and today our specialist home safety support workers will be visiting the 2 individuals who have suffered these fires on the weekend to provide further advice and interventions to help prevent further fires and keep them safe as possible in their homes. But again, this weekend has once again shown the commitments of our firefighters, both whole-time and on-call firefighters, who make themselves available to protect the communities they live in. They've worked extremely hard on some of the incidents this weekend in extremely challenging weather conditions. Also want to note the professionalism of our control staff, who throughout this busy weekend have been constantly monitoring the availability of appliances across North Wales and making sure that there are enough appliances in the right place to continue to keep safe the people who live, work and visit North Wales. So that's an update on some of the activity over this weekend. As far as the COVID situation, members will be aware again from the press that there was a rise in number of people suffering from the virus across the UK, although this is starting to show some decline. But it is still an extremely difficult situation for all sorts of employers who are suffering from losing staff because of self-isolating. We're probably at the same sort of the same limit of numbers of people that we're missing from work as we have done in the very worst part of the pandemic, because of the more people having to self-isolate because of the track and trace system that's working. We currently have over 20 people who are unavailable for us to work due to being off, whether they've had the virus or they're self-isolating due to being in contact with people who have had the virus. But we're continuing with our strategic intent, which is to keep our workforce safe and keep our communities safe. So we'll continue with the measures we've got in place, and we won't be relaxing them until we're sure that it won't impact on our ability to continue to provide the service to people across North Wales. Diolch.
Well, thank you, Richard. Just before I go to members, you highlighted the importance of our partner agencies in terms of this home safety checks, and perhaps can I bring it to members' attention that perhaps they might like to raise this issue with cabinet members for social care, because inevitably it's a department which has quite a turnover of staff generally, and they may not be aware of the reporting mechanism. And I know the fire service would be happy to provide training to any cabinet member feels that they have staff that would benefit from it. So if I could appeal to you perhaps to just contact your respective cabinet members to raise that concern. So first speaker is Mary Davis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Lovely to see the new chief, Dawn. Very warm welcome to you, Dawn. Lovely to see you once again. Richard, have we been able to use the experience we had during the Llantysilio Mountain fire in Pwllheli? Has it been useful to us, the experience we had in Llantysilio?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that we did following the fire in Llantysilio was we trained more of our officers to become wildfire tactical advisors. They learn a lot more about how fire develops on that type of land and methods for containing the fire and finally extinguishing it. So yes, I think the experience we had 3 years ago has certainly held us in good stead for this instant this weekend in Pwllheli.
Okay, thank you. Dylan Rees.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure that we as members would also like to echo Richard's tributes to the staff for their dedication and commitment over the weekend, especially given how the temperature must have made it so unpleasant for them working in such conditions. So our thanks to everybody concerned. I also have a question in relation to the fire above Pwllheli, which is on the front page of the Daily Post this morning. Do we have any indication as to how the fire started? Do we suspect it was malicious or not? Diolch.
It's very, very difficult for us to actually pinpoint exactly the cause of the fire, but we do suspect that this fire was deliberately lit, yes.
Okay. Anne Davis, got a comment to make?
Yeah, diolch fawr, Mr. Cadeirydd.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
If it's appropriate, could I ask Richard how these vulnerable individuals contacted the fire service? Was it themselves, their neighbours, or possibly Careline? Because Careline automatically alerts the fire authority, ambulance and so forth. Thank you.
Part of the work that we do is working with partners, as the chair has said, to identify vulnerable people before fires happen. Unfortunately, sometimes these fires will happen and we haven't had that referral from the local authorities or any other agencies who are supporting these people. So we're continuing to work and echo what the chair said about encouraging all local authorities and the social service department to work alongside us to identify these people before the fires had happened. As I said, these two fires resulted in no serious injuries to these two individuals, and the crews identified them to being vulnerable, as well as them being linked to other agencies. So we're continually to work with other agencies to identify these people and make sure we keep them as safe as we can in their homes.
Yeah, if I could just come back then, Mr. Pereira. My question was regarding the Careline machine, because I'm quite involved with social services and the elderly and the vulnerable and so forth. And I do encourage them to have these Careline machines. Would you have a specific record that they do work for you and that you are being contacted through this particular machine?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been in partnership with several of the Careline providers for a number of years now, and we have noticed a vast increase in the number of fire alarms which originate from these Careline facilities. So the answer to your question is yes, we've got some really good evidence of where the Careline system has worked, alerted us early, and enables us to get to those individuals' dwellings quickly. So the answer is yes, we've got lots of evidence that we are using and we are being alerted by the Careline system.
Oh.
It is a system which is, you know, it's an extra thing in somebody's house which will call the fire service if the individual can't. So it's something which we are encouraging our social service partners to recommend to people as well, to ensure that the people can remain in their homes with that sort of equipment.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard.
Well, I've got no further hands up, so thank you, Richard, for those two updates. Now move on to item 7, which is the statement of accounts and annual governance statement. And can I welcome Matthew Edwards of Audit Wales? I think you're going to lead on this item. So if I could invite you, Matthew, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Chair.
This afternoon. Just brief update in terms of updating you where we're at with the audits of your draft financial statements for 2021. I think originally we were due to present our report to you today, setting out the findings arising from our audit. And whilst the audit's substantially complete, there are a number of matters that we're still discussing with officers and therefore unable to provide an audit opinion at this point in time. We hope these issues will be resolved in due course to enable us to report back to you in October to the Audit Committee and the Executive Panel then. And just to reassure you as a panel, the Accounts and Audit Regulations for Wales and Welsh Government's interpretation of that in response to the pandemic require local government bodies now to publish their audited accounts by the 30th of November. So there are no consequences for you as a fire authority, and indeed that timetable will be in line with a lot of the other local government bodies in Wales as well. So that's just a brief update to update you on where we're at with the audit, and as I say, we'll report back to you in October at the next available meeting. I'd gladly take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Fine. Members, officers, any? Don't see any raised hands. So I take it members are happy then that we'll await the final report for our October meeting. Okay, we'll note your comments, Matthew. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll give my apologies now if that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to item 8. This is the performance monitoring, April 2021 to June 2021. And if I could invite Sian to take this item, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good
afternoon, everyone. This is the monitoring report for preventative work and emergency incidents during the first quarter of this current financial year. On the whole, we went to 1,220 emergency incidents, which is fairly similar to the number in the same quarter last year and the previous year. I'll give you a summary of the content of the report, but because it's only one quarter, it will be a fairly concise report. but I'm more than happy to take any questions at the end. And also what Richard Fairhead has just been discussing feeds into your information for this report. So if I can ask you to turn to the report itself attached, you will see from the graph in paragraph 1.1, and I must admit here, before I go any further, I've got to apologise. There is an error in the Welsh version. I'm sure that you will have noticed. The blue colour is the fires, that's correct on the graph. Orange is the unnecessary calls and grey is the special services. It's correct in English, and we will make sure that the Welsh version is corrected as soon as possible. But apologies for the mistake at the moment. So in the graph for this year, you will see that the service dealt with fewer fires than last year and fewer false alarms and more special services, that is emergencies with no fire. That's the grey colour. If I take all three one at a time, if we look at what's behind the total amount of fires, the graph in paragraph 2.2 shows that the number of main fires is slightly, primary fires is higher, but the secondary fires, open air fires, is quite a bit lower than the same quarter last year. If you remember back to this time last year, there was quite a bit more of people burning garden waste and so on. I'm sure you remember from this time last year. Moving on to the false alarms, the graph in paragraph 4.1, the number from automatic fire alarm systems has increased a bit. And we're looking in detail at that at the moment to see whether there's a pattern developing. That is there a particular type of property which tends to send more of these false alarms, or a number from the same property? So we're looking at that in detail now. And then thirdly, this special service, and the graph is in paragraph 5.1, and I'm sure that you've noticed there's an increase from 96 last year to 153 this year. But even though that's quite a substantial increase, it's fairly comparative with 2 years ago. So last year was the variant. The increase hasn't happened in any one particular category, but it's worthwhile noting that the number of road traffic collisions is higher than last year. Members are aware of that. Of course, this time last year, the roads were much quieter than they are now. If we now go to 7.1, you can see an increase in the number of accidental fires in homes and minor injuries arising from those. Gone up from 29 to 46. And it's worthwhile noting it's in the category of minor injuries, but we are looking at those numbers, as we always do, and we're keeping an eye on what more we can do. What Richard Fairhead discussed with you earlier feeds into that. We're always looking into each incident to see whether there was anything we could have done differently. Moving on, the information about our preventative work is in paragraph 9, including the safe and well checks and the number of fires where there was no fire alarm fitted. That's no different to the update I gave members at the last meeting. It tends to be the same type of picture, and we do look into the detail thoroughly. So, Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank
I'm
you.
sure that Richard will be able to add anything if I've missed anything.
Well, thank you, Sean. As ever, a detailed report. I just wondered, in terms of the accidental fire increase, whether or not that there was any evidence to link it with the fact that perhaps more people were at home, and therefore that is how it has arisen. I think we can understand why the special services have probably increased purely because of the volume of traffic. But I just wonder whether there was any evidence in terms of the accidental fires.
I might invite Richard here to add to the comments. However, I'm asking Richard because he heads up the prevention activity. But in the meantime, Chair, I don't think it would have been, if anything, more people at home at this time last year. I think, if anything, we would have expected the numbers to be down this year. But it's the difference, I think, of note is the fact that there have been more injuries this year. That's what we're looking at. And clearly, with a lot of our prevention work and our home safety checks work, it's a constant round of being aware of any differences, shall we say. We didn't undertake as many home safety checks last year as we would have wanted to, as members are aware, because of the COVID restrictions. And we have to ask ourselves, has that had an impact? It's, in all honesty, perhaps a bit too soon to say that with any certainty, but it certainly is something that we continue to monitor, and it is about having those in-depth analyses undertaken of, what else could we have done potentially, or what is it about the prevention activity that keeps the numbers down, or that could potentially increase reduce the numbers occurring, if you like. So we don't rest on our laurels ever. When figures seem to be going down, it's easy to say that's all right, it's going better, but actually we constantly monitor these, and it really does matter that we continue with our prevention activity. I don't know if Richard wants to add any more to that, if he's got anything else to add.
No, probably to say that yes, there's been an increase of 9 accidental dwelling fires between the two periods, and I think this time last year people were a lot more aware of the safety things at home. It was new for them to be at home during that period. They perhaps listen to the messages more. They've got a bit more used to it now. There's a lot more people working at home. Maybe they're just getting a little bit less careful. It is something clearly we're going to keep an eye on, because an increase there means then there will be an increase in the number of injuries and perhaps something worse. So yes, there is an increase. I think it is because more people are at home, but I think perhaps it shows the importance of us making sure we get the message out to people about how to stay safe in their homes. It means to make sure that we increase, if we can, as far as possible, the number of home safety checks we carry out, and increase also some of the awareness for families of people who live alone. It's one of the things that we have found is that, and we want to try and encourage, is that the families of people who live alone need to help us in getting the message to those people who live alone. So that's a continual thing which we're trying to make sure happens. But we will be keeping on top of and looking at those figures and identifying if there is any trend or any reason why those are increasing.
Thank you both for that. Can I invite Merrick Davis with his question?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Sian. On the same track, Mr. Chairman, can we look into the increase in the accidental fires in dwellings? When people were home last year, you'd have expected to see quite a few more, because they're home. They were home since March and so on. But yet it's this quarter that they've gone up. Is it possible to see how many of the same things are happening for us to be able to work out, well, yes, that's why it's happening? It wouldn't have happened if such and such hadn't happened. So are you able to drill down through the information that you've got to find out what is causing this? I know that you do this, but for us as members of this panel to be able to see that, what are the root causes or what reasons there are, if you can, I would be very happy to do that at the next meeting or another meeting or the following meeting, but I would be very pleased to bring that information to you next time.
Thank you, Sean. I've got no other questioners, so the report is for noting. So can I thank again Sean for its presentation, and members, if you just raise your hand in agreement to note it. Thank you. We'll now move on to item 9. This is the appointment to posts of monitoring officer and treasurer, and I invite the Chief Fire Officer to take this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you let me know if I'm loud enough?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Good. Thank you. The paper sets out the fact that there are 3 statutory appointments to the Fire Authority. One is the Head of Trade Service, the Chief Fire Officer and Chief Executive. One is the Treasurer, and one is the Clerk, who undertakes the role of the Monitoring Officer. Members kindly appointed to the Chief Fire Officer post in March this year. But in March next year, our contract for the Monitoring Officer comes to an end. And therefore, we need to prepare to go out to tender and to replace, or indeed, will be replaced, because as we know, Colin Everett will be stepping down from that role when he steps down from his role as the Chief Executive of Flintshire. At the same time, I have had a meeting with Ken Finch, after 25 years of very dedicated service to the authority from its very beginning, Mr. Finch has indicated that he would want to step down and concentrate on his other interests. I think we can agree that he has done his time, and he has been an absolute value to this authority in keeping it in a very prudent financial way over those 25 years. So as he too is looking to step down, then we are in a position to look for a new treasurer, and it would seem appropriate that we run the 2 processes at the same time and involve members. So the recommendation is that members note the requirement for the authority to appoint to the statutory roles of treasurer and monitoring officer, and approve the commencement of a competitive process for the appointment thereof, with effect from the 1st of April 2022. Happy to take any questions.
Before we go to any questions, obviously, Ken, your service to the North Wales Fire Service speaks for itself, and I don't propose to give a vote of thanks as such. We still have at least 4 months of service from you, but I will certainly do that at your final Fire Authority meeting. But keep up the good work, and I'm sure members will be keen to thank you in due course. I'll go to questions, but I will suggest a possible makeup of the committee which executive might like to support. So I invite Mary Davis with this question first.
Thank you once again, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to reiterate your thanks to Ken Finch. A question to members who haven't been on the Fire Authority for years. And because officers have given us such a good service for so many years, when we have a changeover of officers, I take it that local authorities, if it's not the same one, it's Flintshire at the moment and Conwy at the moment with regards to treasurer. So if the people change, that the local authority that employs that person will change. That's just for information. I think I'm correct in saying that.
Well, thank you, Mary. I think we deal with that nearer the time. Well, my suggestion in terms of the makeup of the committee, I thought perhaps it was appropriate the chair and deputy chair were on that committee, and also given the nature of the treasurer's role, that the chair and deputy chair of audit perhaps should be on that committee. Which would leave then, in terms of all local authorities being representative, a representative being appointed from Denbighshire and Gwynedd. So I don't know how members feel about the makeup of that potential committee to deal with this appointment process in due course. Mary, has got a question in relation to that, or is it?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I have done it.
Apologies, I hadn't taken my raised hand down. Apologies, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I've got a comment from Dylan Rees.
Thank you, Chair. I would support your proposal, which to me sounds both sensible and equitable.
Okay, thank you. John Brynmore Hughes.
Yes, I echo what Dylan Rees has said, but we've got to remember as well that we have a local election in May next year, that the outlook could change completely.
But this appointment will in actual fact have to be made prior to that in terms of these two positions anyway, John. Well, I don't see any more raised hands, so presumably that suggestion I made seems to...
Peter.
Oh, go ahead, Ken.
Can I make a comment?
Indeed.
My interest is in finishing your service rather than competing for the service. But your kind words are greatly appreciated. The other issue I wanted to touch on was the comments that Councillor Mary has made should be considered, but isn't necessarily so because of differences in the way that the work is there. The role of the treasurer is separate from accounting and financial systems, and I think it should be part of the remit to think how you should proceed, but never in the period that I've acted as treasurer has there been any question on support services moving if the post moved. At first, earlier on, it would have probably been okay, but there's a lot more sophisticated systems in place now, and it just might not keep on operating properly if you went for the big bang. Just a point to consider in the process.
Well, thank you, Ken. As I said earlier, we're obviously going to have the benefit of your services for the next 4 months or so, so I'm sure you'll be able to give us input as we assemble the terms of reference in terms of those two positions. So look forward to that contribution. Okay, so in terms of the recommendation to the makeup of that committee, the executive content to make that recommendation to the Fire Authority? Okay, thank you very much. Well, I have no further items, members. This afternoon, and I know John Brynmore Hughes has got an ice cream in awaiting, so hopefully many of you will have too. So can I thank you again and look forward to seeing you at a future meeting. Afternoon.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.